Let my honesty spill out through the pages.
You're listening to Escaping the Rat Race. I'm your host, Amy Leo, a singer, songwriter, and mental health educator. And our show is all about questioning the status quo and pushing the boundaries into what's possible for human beings and not probable. So tune in and get ready to escape the rat race, not only the monotonous 9 to 5 work grind, but also that incessant internal mental chatter that prevents most of us humans from experiencing more joy, peace, clarity, and freedom.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And actually, I guess it's best to wish everyone a very happy new year. My name is Amy Leo, and I'm honored to have special guest Dr. Dicken Bettinger on today. And before we started today's show, we were kind of going back and forth with some ideas of what might be helpful to talk about. And one of that is certainly this idea of a new year, a new me. And I'd love to hear Dr. Dicken Bettinger's views on that. You know, Dicken, how do you see goal setting and New Year's resolutions? And let's just go from there.
Thank you, Amy, for talking with me today. And I'm sitting here about an hour north of Seattle, right on the ocean on Fidalgo Island. Beautiful, beautiful spot in the country. Well, anyways, Amy and I were talking about how easy it is when people aren't feeling as good as they think they could to start working on themselves in one way or another. And there are countless numbers of ways in which people can work to improve themselves. And it reached a point for me where if I went into a bookstore, it was almost hard to find any book that wasn't about self-improvement. Certainly, if you went to the psychology section or the business section or the education section, you would find book after book after book telling you, here's all the things you need to do to become a better person, a happier person, a wiser person. And I've been very fortunate. I've been a psychologist for 40 years, and 30 years ago, I came across an understanding that was so helpful for me to access well-being in myself and my clients without working hard on yourself. And that may that may sound funny, but the premise has always been in self-improvement, the premise is you're missing something, like you're not loving enough, you're not happy enough, you're not creative enough, you don't communicate as well as you could. So the premise is you're missing something. And that if you work hard, you can develop it. That's the premise. There's another way of understanding human beings, which is actually based on something that's much more factual about human beings, is that human beings already have everything they need to be happy and loving and wise. And it's built into us already. And the only thing that covers up our capacity to be happy, loving, and wise is our own thinking. Now, if this is true, that we all are innately healthy already, you have perfect psychological well-being at your core, then it's not a matter of developing your well-being because you already have it. It's a matter of recognizing the thinking that's in the way of it. And that thinking, when people's heads clear, you'll see universally, no matter who I'm talking to anywhere in the world, when people's heads clear and quiet down, you'll always see them feeling more peaceful, more joyful, more loving. So that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years, is exploring this new way of understanding the human mind and how it really operates, and then traveling around the world sharing this understanding in seminars.
Yes, and just to jump in, it has also had a profound impact on my own life, this kind of understanding. But just to play a little bit of, I guess we'll say, devil's advocate, I come across folks and then they'll say, oh, that makes sense for some people. But, there's some people that are really messed up. How could you say that they're healthy? Can you speak to that, Dicken?
Yeah, I can. It's pretty evident that a lot of us suffer, and all of us at times suffer psychologically, myself included. So we're not saying that you can't suffer, but the suffering that takes place within our own thinking. So we'll say, well, how can we say that people, that everybody has built into them the capacity for well-being? Well, the fundamental discovery that allowed us to have hope for any human being is what I would call the principle of thought. Every human being, no matter who you are, lives in the world of their own thinking. That's true. It's always been true, and it always will be true. That from the moment we're born until we die, we live in the world of thought. And thought is the key to happiness, and thought is the key to misery. Because every thought that a human being has is brought to life, and we feel and experience it. We cannot have a feeling independent of our thinking. There's nothing you can feel during your life that's not created from thought. And as simple as that is, and as scientific as it is, and as factual as that is, we haven't been taught this simple truth. So I've asked thousands and thousands of people, what are you feeling? And it doesn't matter whether they say they're sad or anxious or happy or joyful. If I then ask, where do you think that feeling comes from? What's the source of that feeling? I've asked tens of thousands of people. I've never had anybody say, well, that's obvious. It's just what I'm thinking. My feeling is thought. And because people don't understand that, the instant people don't understand, the instant any of us, all of us, the instant we don't recognize that what our feeling is being created from within via thought, we link our feeling into something in the world, like my kids are making me upset, this job is stressing me out, the weather is really bumming me out today, you make me happy, walking in the woods makes me happy. So very innocently, this misunderstanding very innocently has existed in human beings for hundreds of years. There's been a misunderstanding about where experience, especially feelings, come from. Because of that misunderstanding, it leads to all kinds of psychological suffering. It leads people to do all kinds of thinking about life that only tends to lower people's spirits. And as people begin to understand better the role that thought plays in carrying their experience, they start to wake up to how much of their thinking during the day is not helpful or useful. Because it's just generating tension or stress or upset. And that as people become aware of that, they begin to, without even working on it, they begin to drop away a lot of the thinking that's creating their upset or unhappiness. And as people have less on their minds, they will always, always, always start to feel better, and the quality of their thinking improves. I've taken this training into some of the largest corporations in the United States, and I've done executive coaching with some of the presidents of some of the top companies in our country. And there's a direct connection between state of mind and performance in business. And as people's state of mind improves, which means they just have less and less thinking on their minds that creates tension, stress, static, preoccupation, upset, that when people have less on their minds, they perform better across the board. They feel better and they perform better across the board. We've known this in sports forever. And now we're beginning to discover that's true at any point, anywhere for a human being. So it's very exciting. It's a breakthrough discovery about the source of human experience that's very scientific.
I would love to then move into this question. So I come across people in my life that are on to the idea of thought. And there are books that do mention thought, in the personal development section of Barnes and Noble, So why wouldn't you recommend then that someone would need to try to have better thinking? If your thinking creates your feeling experience, why wouldn't someone try to control that or attempt to have, again, a better thinking?
Well, I did that myself for years and years, and I tell you, number one, it's a lot of work.
I second that. Yes, it is. Yeah, it
is. There's no question that if you think in a more positive way, you're going to feel better, but it takes so much work, and it's unnecessary to do all that work, and I'll tell you why. If you watch little kids, when they fall out of their personal thinking into the present moment, they enjoy the heck out of life. They really enjoy life. I have 3 young grandkids, and no one taught them positive thinking. Yeah. And if you tried to teach a little kid positive thinking, they would then spend a lot of time thinking about their thinking, which would take them out of the present moment, which would be an added thought burden for them in their life. And after a while, they would be begging us adults to give them permission to stop trying so hard to think positive when they could just go and enjoy themselves. See, it's built into us to feel positive. When our head's clear, you don't have to try and think positive. It's very interesting when people drop thoughts that create stress, tension, and upset, as their head clears, they will always start to feel better. When people are trying really hard to think positive, that takes them out of the present moment. And when they let go of that effort to think positive, the paradox is when their head clears, they start to feel better. So it's built into us to feel good.
Yeah, I've also had this strange experience over the past maybe couple years since I started learning about this understanding. And it's that even when I'm in a quote unquote low mood or low state of mind, there's been this undertone of kindness now or peace now, even amidst the tumultuous emotion.
Yes. Oh, Amy, this is my favorite topic.
Bazinga.
Very few people understand that, in a sense, you can be at peace when you're not feeling good. You can have well-being even when you're down. You can be kind and loving even when you're in a low mood. And here's what I've seen about that. I have a new grandson who's 7 weeks old, and I've spent hours just holding him and looking at him, and he is just fully present in life without the interference of any ideas or beliefs or concepts. Right? He's in what I would call the pre-conceptual stage. Because he doesn't have any concepts, he doesn't have any thoughts that he shouldn't be feeling what he's feeling. He doesn't have any thoughts that are ideas that he should be feeling better than he's feeling. He doesn't have any judgments about himself and other people, because those are concepts. He doesn't have any shoulds, right? So he's just continually having different experiences, but he's free of the influence of his conceptual mind. Now, every adult has moments when they fall out of their conceptual mind into the now. You can call that being fully present. You can call that listening. You can call that being in the zone. You can call that being in pure awareness, awareness free of the contamination of our conceptual mind. In those moments, there's no psychological problem, issue, or struggle. Because problems, issues, and struggles are created from our own ideas that things should be different than they are. And then we start working and trying and efforting and have all these shoulds about how things should be. And that kind of thinking creates feelings of dissatisfaction. See, we're back to thought again. You can't escape it. You can't not experience whatever you're thinking.
I have a great example of this happening this week.
Good.
So I've actually been in contact with people that are more in a traditional coaching role. So, what they talk about in sales conversations or enrolling new clients, if you have kind of a heart-based coaching business, is that you need to take people into the pain and you ask them questions like, if this doesn't change for you now, how will life be in the next 3 months or 6 months? And when I was the person on the other end of that question, Dicken, I actually, for the first time in years, woke up in the middle of the night with anxiety because I forgot that anything I'm thinking in a moment, rather anything I'm feeling in a moment, it actually has no relevance about what may happen in the future. Anything that I think in a moment, I'm making up. I'm guessing. Yeah. So if I'm guessing, I might as well not maybe, catastrophize or just leave it alone. I just think it's fascinating. And I just keep hearing this theme from people that you and I have as well done a lot of seeking, a lot of reading, are interested in the self. And I keep hearing this theme of, well, I need to get and, reach my highest self and get into the right state of mind. And from what you're saying, that's just more of the same.
Yes. Well, it's really quite interesting. We have been trained since we're very little to believe that the outside world causes us to feel what we feel. We've heard over and over again people around us saying, you hurt my feelings, you make me feel good, the traffic is bothering me. We hear that over and over again, and it's an innocent misunderstanding, like I said. And now there's a more scientific realization that everything people think creates an experience. And you can't not participate in that process. That's how we're all wired up to work. And as you begin to realize that, you begin to wonder, why am I thinking about this? Since I'm a free thinker, I can think about something or not. Why am I thinking about this if it's making me anxious? Why am I thinking about this if it makes me angry? Why am I thinking about this if it just keeps me feeling uncomfortable? And then more and more, as you realize that, you begin to drop away more and more and more of your thinking. And the discovery is very immediate and obvious if you know what you're looking for, is that when your head clears of that kind of thinking, you feel calmer, you feel more peaceful, you begin to feel happier. And as you feel better, you will notice that the quality of your thinking improves. You get more and more helpful ideas. You get more and more, your thinking has a lot more clarity and common sense in it. And that's what everybody is looking for. In other words, it's given to us freely when our minds are open and receptive. You can't think your way to happiness and well-being, but you're a thought away from happiness and well-being, and you're a thought away from sadness and unhappiness. The now is available to every human being in every moment because we're living in the now. It's just our engagement in the conceptual mind that makes it appear as if we have the difficulties that we're experiencing. So that in any situation, no matter who we are, as my clients have become more aware of the role thought plays in creating 100% of their feeling experience, and they begin to realize that, just like is happening for you, Amy, just like is happening for thousands and thousands of people around the world, beginning to wake up to the fact of thought, not examining the content of their thinking, but just waking up to the fact that in every moment I'm feeling my thinking. In every moment I'm a thinking being. As my thinking changes, my feelings change. As my head clears, as I return to the present moment, the thinking on my mind begins to dissipate and fall away naturally without any effort or any work. And then I will begin to feel better and think better, which allows me to deal with difficult circumstances more effectively. That's why they say in case of an emergency, stay calm. They don't say in case of emergency, think yourself into a frenzy. Right? Because when we're calm, we have more common sense. When our heads are clear, we think better and we feel better.
I'm just so excited to keep sharing this understanding and having it bubble up and grow in myself as well. It's just so practical. I just want to, hit that home again for the listeners, how practical this really is. I myself used to be someone that had a lot of what we'd call type A, patterns of thinking. I guess we'll call it that.
Yes.
And again, this belief that something, an event in the future, for instance, being a famous singer, that would mean that I'm worthy as a human being. And I've seen really clearly that that is not the case, because what you're talking about is universal to every human being. And there's things that we share on this radio show called Amy's Real Stories. And what's so exciting about that and why I like to do that is because there are people from all over the world, different periods of time. So there's nothing in circumstance that you can point to as the reason why that person overcame, for instance, very difficult circumstances. So it's just exciting.
Well, Amy, I've always been intrigued by the fact that you can take any difficult circumstance in life and you'll find somewhere people that are in that circumstance and they thrive. In other words, they become selflessly compassionate or loving, or respond to situations in a way that's helpful. And it was always hard to explain how it was that sometimes any one of us could rise to the occasion and do well in difficult circumstance. And now we understand why that is. Now we understand that every one of us has the capacity to do well in difficult circumstance, because the circumstance itself doesn't determine our experience as we've always thought. What we're thinking determines our experience. So even if I'm very fearful in a certain experience, even if I have a fearful response to something horrible happening, if I understand that that fear is created from my own thinking, that experience can pass quicker than if I think the circumstance is causing me to be afraid. And as it passes quicker, I can access my own best thinking to respond and deal with that circumstance or that situation. So it's very helpful. It's incredibly practical, because the practical nature is that all human beings have common sense. And in a moment when our heads are clear, we have access to that common sense, and that will help us deal with anything that's going on in our life. It's very helpful. Can I give just like a really simple, practical illustration?
Yes, please.
Let's say with my wife, and she's in a low mood, and she opens her mouth and she starts being critical about something, and I start thinking about that in a way that I feel bothered or upset. Now, it used to be that I thought, well, my wife is the problem. If only she would change, I would feel good, right? Or I thought it was a relationship problem, and we would talk about it. Now, very often, when I feel bothered during the day, if I understand that it's in my own thinking, if it's not in my thinking, I wouldn't feel that way. I can step away for a moment. Nothing I need to do. I could just wait for a little bit, fall back into the present moment. When people are just resting in the present moment, their thinking begins to quiet down on its own. It's built into us for that to happen. And as soon as I would feel better, I would go back and be with my wife, and you know what? She looked like a different person.
Funny how that happens, I know.
It's funny how that happens. And so, therefore, I could bring love and understanding back to her rather than bringing my upset and bother to her. And it's just a human thing. If you bring your upset to another person, rarely do they go, oh, thank you, that feels so much better. Yeah, okay, I will immediately change my ways and become what you would like me to be. I just don't see it happen. And so the more that I realize that I have well-being within me, and when I access that well-being, if that's what I bring to the other person, our relationship will get better. It's not going to deteriorate, it's going to improve. When I work with couples and they're having difficulty in their relationship, each person is innocently getting caught up in their thinking, not feeling good, and thinking their feeling has something to do with each other or the relationship, rather than is just 100% created from their own thinking. And so very innocently, they blame their feelings on each other, and they bring their negative feelings to each other, and I don't see relationships improve when that happens. And I think that's the primary reason why the divorce rate is so high, at least in the United States. That's why it's like 50% of people end up getting divorced. So this is really, I can't tell you the number of couples who have woken up to the fact of thought, rediscovered the beauty and power of resting in the present moment, and then accessed their own deeper feelings of well-being and common sense that allows them to create beautiful, beautiful relationships. It's very hopeful and encouraging because it's the most direct route to well-being. Thought is the key. I can't say that enough, Amy. Thought has been the missing link for humanity. People have not understood the role of thought, this creative power. That's what thought is. It's a creative power that allows human beings to think and experience. Thought is the most understood fundamental principle in life. Because of that misunderstanding, very innocently, people get caught up in all kinds of thinking and feelings that are painful and then live in those feelings in a way that is not helpful for them. Very innocent. Very innocent. This is so beautiful. I mean, I have colleagues and friends that are teaching this to kindergarten kids, elementary school kids, middle school kids, high school kids, college kids, and they'll pick up on it very quickly, very, very quickly, because there's a logic to it that's compelling. Whatever you think, you will feel. When your thinking changes, you'll feel different. If your thinking doesn't change, you'll keep feeling exactly what you're feeling. If you don't understand where your feelings come from, it's inevitable that we will each then blame something in life other than thinking for what we're feeling. Right? That when we wake up to thought and our head's clear, we will always feel better and we have something more to offer each other in the world. This is being taught in prisons. It's being taught in communities that have been rife with violence and drug use and abuse. Thought is the missing link. Thought is the key. The power of thought to create any experience that a human being is having. Any experience. And when people realize that that's where experience comes from, it really sorts things out for them. It settles them down. It makes life more understandable. It allows us to relax into life rather than struggle against it.
Yeah, that really resonated with me when you just said it makes life more understandable. And, the theme that also just keeps coming up is that, we have meaning making built into our system. So it's just the knowledge of that. And that when we have a misunderstanding, that creative power of thought will disguise and it will look like something else that we're creating the meaning from, but it's sourced from the energy running through our own biochemistry. Yeah.
I love that we're all lovers and don't know it. That I've never met a client anywhere in the world who, when they wake up to thought and fall into the now, that they don't become kinder, warmer, more understanding. It's built into us to be in love with life. The only thing that gets in the way of us living life or enjoying life or being at peace in life is our own thinking. It's not other people. It's not the traffic. It's not the weather. It's not our biochemistry. Nothing in the world determines our feeling and experience. Every feeling and experience is created from this universal power of thought. And realizing that helps us wake up to the thinking that's in the way of us feeling more connected to life. If you and I were walking in the woods on a beautiful day, if we were caught up in worry thinking, I guarantee we would experience our thinking and we wouldn't have an experience of the beauty that surrounds us. I also guarantee that if our head clears of all that worry thinking, we'd fall in love with the woods. We'd go, oh, so beautiful. Oh, wow. Oh, look at that bird. We'd be wide open to being more fully connected to life. I'm only interested in learning about the power of thought if it's on a practical level, it helps us to fall back in love with people and life again. So I can see someone who is extremely unhappy and even acting unloving and have compassion for them because they're just innocently caught up in their thinking and they don't realize that their unhappiness is created from within. It's innocent. Now, this doesn't excuse their behavior, but it allows me to be more understanding of people. We become more understanding of people the more we see the universal principles that govern their experience. It's almost like you can look at any person and say, no wonder they're feeling the way they do given what they're thinking. No wonder. Of course they're feeling that way. It's understandable. It's understandable that inside of them is this beautiful, caring, warm, loving person is just being covered over by the thinking that they're caught up in. But for that thinking, you'd see a lover standing in front of you. See, the principles simplify life because they're true. Human beings are thinkers. Human beings can be aware of the fact of thought because awareness is fundamental to human beings. And as we become aware of the fact of thought and our heads begin to clear more, you'll see that it's innate for us to enjoy life and to love life. It's innate. It's built into people. I've seen no exceptions to this anywhere in the world. No exceptions. Whether somebody is healthy or whether somebody is struggling and suffering, they're just like you and I. They live in the world of thought. They have this capacity to be aware built into them, and they have this innate capacity for love and understanding built into them. No exceptions. It's a very hopeful understanding to see humanity this way, to see the beauty in people, to not take personally other people's low moods, that just because someone else is in a low mood, it doesn't mean we automatically have to join them in a low mood. If it's not in our thinking, it won't be in our experience.
Yeah, and I just love how the system is built that way. Individuals see it at different times. You know, they have their own ability. Every individual has the ability for fresh thinking. And what's been really helpful to see is that it has nothing to do with me, both with myself and with others, because I can definitely see back when you were talking about, the tendency of us as a culture to think in relationships. I've been talking, with my sweetheart for months and months and months about this understanding. And, sometimes he gets frustrated. And then we were sitting on the couch and he said, oh my gosh, this is true. Thought creates feeling. And now, it didn't take him making a resolution or a goal to change or reading lots of books. In his culture, personal development world and psychology is not as mainstream as it is, for us in the States. And what's been so neat is to watch him step into different roles and experience this flow of life, and even being known now as the guy at work that's the calm, level-headed guy. He says, that's never been what people call me. So it's been wonderful, He says, I'm not the hothead. They come to me, even as, it's just so cool. And what was really great again and practical for me personally in that experience is that it didn't matter to me, honestly, whether he got the principles or not. There was no forcing there. And that's the freedom that's available, is to not have an agenda with yourself or other people. And it's incredibly freeing.
It is very freeing, Amy. And I love that everybody has built into them already what they need to wake up to the fact that they're a thinker. They have built to them already to wake up to the fact that our fundamental nature is well-being. And you can just observe it in yourself and others. You can see, you can start to catch yourself thinking about something in a way that makes you more stressed or anxious. And when you realize that you're creating your experience from thought, you'll notice it's built into us to let go of whatever creates our unhappiness or suffering. So if you don't realize it's thought, you don't tend to let go of the thoughts that create it. If you do realize that it's thought, you begin to let go of more and more of your thinking. And as you do, that thinking falls away. It falls away. If you don't give your attention to your thinking and hold on to it, you come back to the now, and when you're in the now, there's no holding. You're like a little baby again. You're just like my little baby, 7-week-old baby grandson. You're just suddenly no longer being influenced by all of your own worries and judgments and shoulds and have-tos and dissatisfactions and expectations, and all of that thinking falls away. And always then you come back to well-being, presence, aliveness, in the moment. See, I knew that when I was playing sports that I could fall out of my personal thinking and enjoy the heck out of playing sports. I just didn't understand the role thought played across the board in my life. So when I wasn't playing sports, I was very, very insecure, very shy, quiet, and anxious, worried a lot.
Yeah, I got the visual of, sorry, Dicken, I don't know why I wanted to share my visual, but I got the visual as you're speaking, of a roller coaster, and then the innocence as it gets scary as you're going down, that the tendency we've been taught is to put the brakes by either doing something or to manipulate it or run away from it. But if you just really let it be, that you continue on the ride, and then you loop, and then you go back up and you go through all these turns. And I don't know why that just came up, but it did when you were talking about that.
Well, it's a beautiful metaphor, because it's natural for us to go up and down and have moods. And the only thing that complicates that is our own thinking. But it's very, very natural to go up and down. So to have the freedom to have a low mood and not do a lot of thinking about it allows you to go through your low mood gracefully. Most adults that I see, when they have a low mood or are feeling unhappy or are feeling stressed, lean into their thinking and think even harder about things. As you begin to understand the role of thought, the opposite happens. If you don't feel good, you tend to let go of everything you're thinking, everything. Because you'll see very quickly, thinking while you're feeling upset or in a low mood tends to keep it alive and even make it worse. So it's very powerful if you go through a low mood when you're not feeling well. And you're not doing a lot of thinking, you'll be just like a little baby. You'll be upset and then you'll be over it. In psychological terms, we call that being resilient, that people who are healthy are very resilient. They get upset, they get over it very quickly. They get over it very quickly because they don't do a lot of thinking to keep it alive, period. That's why little kids get over things quickly, and adults can sometimes, it takes hours and hours to get over an upset. Their resilience is compromised because of this misunderstanding. But as people begin to realize directly, like your boyfriend did, as he began to realize more directly that his feeling is connected to his thinking, all of a sudden, by falling out of that thinking, you get over things quicker, much quicker. when my daughter was 13, she caught on to this, and she used to be upset for days at a time about things. And after she realized the nature of thought, and she was one of those people that, Amy, that had a huge realization about this. It really hit her like a ton of bricks. Oh my God, Dad, it's just my own thinking that's keeping this alive. She would say, Dad, I still get upset, but I can't keep it going for longer than 10 minutes. So here's a 13-year-old who used to be upset for days at a time. She was what you might call a drama queen because she was so sensitive and emotional and reactive. And suddenly she's just like a poised, confident 30, 40-year-old woman. Every one of our friends said, oh my God, what has happened to Nina? She just became happy, and she'd get upset and just not interfere with it and not add thinking onto it and not judge it and not label it and just go about her day, and it would pass just like it would for a little kid. It sure was thrilling for us as parents to see our kids begin to catch on to this key to happiness and key to living a life of enjoyment and love, even with all the ups and downs we go through. Because I still have ups and downs. I get upset, I get stressed, I get angry, I get hurt. If I know it's thought, at least I'm not blaming the world or other people. If I know it's thought, I'm not inclined to keep thinking about things and keep it alive. If I know it's thought, I'm interested in just letting it be, like you said, just let it be. It'll pass. It's just a little thought storm. It's normal to have little thought storms. It's normal to have weather. Nothing wrong with weather, just part of nature. We're part of nature. We're connected to this beautiful intelligence of life. It's a fun thing to explore. In 30 years, I've never found anything that's so helpful to explore because it leads to greater love and understanding.
Yeah. Wow. Well, talk about the passage of time in the now. We're out of time.
oh my God. Okay.
Holy Toledo.
Oh, wow.
But there are a couple things I want to ask before we wrap up today. But I've learned that I should ask them one at a time instead of back to back. So my first question is, I hear a lot of folks say that it's biochemistry, or that if they have a drug addiction or a loved one has a drug addiction, that there's no hope. Can you just kind of, again, package that a little bit for folks, even though I feel you have answered that in the interview? Yeah, just specifically that. I hear that a lot, Dicken.
Well, I'm not against medication, right? If someone is diabetic, for them to take insulin just makes sense, doesn't it?
Of course, yeah.
And there are medications that can help people, that can be helpful for people in terms of helping to quiet their minds down so that they can function better in life. But no medication can give people the understanding necessary to realize the power of thought and the role of thought in life. And as people understand that, they do less and less thinking that's hopeless and negative. And every thought affects our biochemistry. So as you do less and less stressful thinking, less and less negative thinking, it's literally changing your biochemistry and making it healthier. And that's something that's not often recognized. People think they have a certain set biochemistry. Our biochemistry is changing moment to moment based on what we're thinking. And that's very scientific. So medications can be helpful in the same way. If you have a headache, you can take something. If you have a migraine, you take something and it helps relieve the pressure. But as you begin to get out from underneath stressful thinking, it will always lead to greater well-being. So ultimately, understanding is more powerful than biochemistry. So that people who have suffered from a lot of psychological difficulties that have been labeled as a biochemical problem begin to realize ultimately and primarily it's a thought problem. And as people begin to realize that, there's great hope that they can access their innate well-being. I've never met anybody, no matter how troubled, that when their head clears, they don't become more loving and understanding. I haven't seen any exceptions to that. And so it's very hopeful for people that you already have well-being, even though it's covered over by years of negative conditioned thinking. Very hopeful for people that you can get out from underneath the burden of your negative conditioned thinking. You can get out from underneath the influence of that thinking. And you will be able to access well-being regardless of what your biochemistry is. And as you access well-being more and more fully, you have your biochemistry changes in a very healthy, positive direction.
I'm so struck by the fact that we're all just human beings doing the best that we can. So whatever has occurred, you know, whether it was addiction to illegal drugs or biochemistry and you have a diagnosis or you had a hard upbringing, you know, circumstantially, we are all human beings.
Yes.
And we all work the same way. That's how principles work. And that's why this understanding in particular, I think, is so exciting for myself and as you've stated for yourself too, Dicken. Awesome. Great. Well, so much for coming on. And I would love if you could share, where can people find out more about you to get in contact, Dicken, if they'd like to have a longer conversation or a more personalized conversation with you?
Well, I have a website, 3 Principles Mentoring. There are tons of materials available now for people that are interested in learning more about this understanding. I would suggest that people check out the works of a man named Sydney Banks, who had a profound enlightenment experience or awakening and discovered the truth of these principles. If people are interested, I wrote a book about the principles called Coming Home. You can get on Amazon. There are websites, 3pgc.org has a lot of free podcasts, blogs, videos. There's a website, 3principlesmovies.com, that has a lot of free videos with people talking about the principles and their application. That'd be the best way to find out about this.
Fantastic. And I will also post all that in the show notes for people to just visually click, and they can also get taken to the site for the book and things like that. Well, thank you very much, Dicken, for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. This understanding has profoundly impacted my life. So I really just thank, you know, the pioneers of the understanding, you know. So like yourself. So,
thanks, Amy. It's been great being with you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Yeah.
I sincerely hope that you heard something from Dr. Bettinger's interview today that piqued your curiosity, what we've been talking about, to test out how the role of thought affects your daily life. And instead of sharing an individual Amy's real story today, I want to share the real story of humanity and how we've continued to evolve in helpful ways. Look at people like Copernicus, who challenged the predominant ideology of his time that the earth was the center of the universe. He demonstrated that, in fact, the sun was the center of the universe. Look at people like Joseph Lister, who was at the front of germ theory, which purported that invisible microorganisms were actually the cause of disease and not things like bad blood or bad air. The Wright brothers, who challenged all of what we thought was possible when they actually were able to put a machine in the air with human beings and land it safely. Or Roger Bannister, who proved that the belief a human being could not run a mile in under 4 minutes was not true, because he actually did that. My point in sharing this is that we are at a crossroads now in our understanding of what it is to be human. And what Dicken and I have shared today does go against our cultural norms and beliefs, but that doesn't mean that what we're saying isn't true. I invite you to look into this for your own life. Reach out to Dicken, or of course you can reach out to me as well. Again, my name was Amy Leo. If you want to speak with me personally, you can reach me at ratrace@amyleo.com. Again, that email address is ratrace@amyleo.com. Next week, we have an amazing guest, Julie Gray, who's going to be talking about an end to procrastination and self-sabotage. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, keep rockin'.